Welcome to the After Chat. I'm Michael.
I'm Madison.
And today we're going to be talking about Samson and taking a gander at a couple of his weaknesses.
Yeah.
You ready?
I sure am.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the After Chat. Real questions. Real talk. Real life.
All right. So what is a movie that you can quote pieces from? Like you watch this movie and you can just rattle off the dialogue right there with the characters.
Nacho Libre.
Really?
Yeah.
You're the first person I've ever met that enjoy that movie.
I'm obsessed with that movie. It's been like a mainstay in my life for
Really?
many years.
What
now,
about
yeah.
it? Like, what about it?
There's just something about the sense of humor, like the very, very deadpan delivery of like a lot of the jokes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also just love Jack Black.
No, I like Jack Black.
Anything
too.
he does, I love.
You know, I don't think he got nowhere near enough credit for what a good job he did in that King Kong movie that he was in.
I haven't seen it, but if
Oh.
it's Jack Black, I support it.
No, he was fantastic. I'm a Jack Black fan too.
I think he's awesome. I've seen him like one of the very few first things he did was he had a guest role in X-Files. Like he played one of the characters of somebody who I think he died. I don't know. Anyways.
No, I remember that. No, yeah.
He did a great job. Like,
fun fact.
just love him.
Never-Ending Story Part 3. A lot of people don't know there's a Part 3, but there is a Part 3, and Jack Black is in it.
Wow.
No, love his Tenacious D.
Oh, yeah.
The tribute.
Oh, yeah.
Like the greatest song in the world, but they couldn't remember it. So this is a tribute to that song. Love it.
Yeah. He's just all around a super cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's genuinely, it's a good movie. I know there's a few people on staff here that have very strong opinions about whether or not it's actually a worthwhile movie. Our senior pastor, Brian, he was just not like it. He said it was one of the stupidest movies he ever watched, but I love it.
Unforgiven. Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman. I've watched that movie probably 1,500 times.
What makes you want to watch it that many times to where you can quote it?
Because it's the opposite of the hero's journey.
Ah.
It is the, most people in most stories, it follows a typical arc. Like a hero has to overcome something to accomplish the goal, and then he's usually better at the end of it.
Yeah.
In some form of fashion.
True.
The exact opposite. So now you meet William Money. He's a reformed person. He's trying to do the right thing, but to accomplish the goal that he has to do, to accomplish the goal that he has in front of him, he has to become the worst version of himself.
Oh, man.
To do it. And so
intense.
you're watching him kind of struggle with that until he fully gives in and does the things.
Man. All right.
So
sounds intense.
It really is, and it is fantastic. I think it won a Best Picture Oscar.
Nice.
It won a whole bunch. It's won a bunch of awards. It is a fantastic movie.
Very cool.
So Unforgiven and Nacho Libre.
Two wildly different vibes.
You got a weekend right there.
Yeah, there's something cooking with that combination.
So what is big transition? What is the best elementary school project you ever turned in?
So I went through a really weird obsession with Claire Barton in elementary school, who is she was a nurse. And she, during the Civil War, was pretty instrumental in creating the American Red Cross.
Okay.
So she had seen the Red Cross in action in other spaces or heard about it. And there was a autobiography, or not an autobiography, a biography book that I read so many times, and I tried to make it like my regular book report book because the curriculum that we used when I was going through school, we did multiple book reports every year. So I like had the option to like pick multiple times, and I was like, I still want to do it. I want to read it again. I want to. So I think hopefully by like the fourth or fifth time that I did a book report book on this biography about Clara Barton, I'm hoping that it was the best project that I turned in because I tried so many times to report on this super cool thing that I was obsessed with. I thought I wanted to be a nurse. I thought it was super cool. It was just a really well-written biography that was like written to capture kids' attention. I could not handle being a nurse. I'm not wired for it
I
at
could
all.
not either. You need a certain type of stomach.
Oh, yeah, and I do not have it. But I admire those that do, clearly, because I
Yeah.
wrote so many book reports on it. What about you?
It was a science fair project, and it was the incredible. It was about eggs and creating a vacuum to suck a hard-boiled egg into a bottle. So, like, if you take a hard-boiled egg and you put it like on a bottle top, and so if you light a little piece of paper on fire, drop it in the bottle, set the egg on top, it'll create a vacuum and suck the egg down into it.
Very cool.
And then if you take the bottle and you put it up to your mouth and you blow air into it, it'll pop the egg out.
Ah.
So I did that in front of
Very
a large
cool.
group of people.
I bet they loved it.
It was something.
They were probably super excited to see that happen.
So yeah, little third grade Mikey Hedrick.
He was playing with fire.
I was playing with fire and
Who wasn't?
demonstrating how exactly.
I've for sure played with fire in third grade. I got in huge trouble for it.
I mean, if you don't, did you even have a childhood if you haven't played with fire?
Exactly.
We should probably put a disclaimer up there somewhere. That you'll handle that in post.
Maybe. I don't know.
But that was my project, and so I stood up on a little platform and demonstrated
Very
that
cool.
you can suck an egg into a bottle that otherwise wouldn't fit into
Nice.
through science.
Did you get any special recognition for this?
No,
It sounds like a great project.
I mean, I got a light applause, I'm sure.
Oh, nice.
So-
See, I didn't ever have anyone to present in front of because I was homeschooled. So even that is like, wow, an applause. Okay.
Okay, well, bring in an old copy of your book report, and I'll hit you with one of these.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Dumbledore style.
Nice.
Okay, so where are we going?
We're going to be talking about weaknesses today, particularly through the lens of Samson. So kind of to prep us for that conversation, I think it'd be interesting to just kind of hear what some of our biggest weaknesses are personally. And I know we'll possibly revisit, our own stories later and how we interact with our weaknesses, but is there anything that you got that it's just, this one thing? I have an inkling what your answer would be.
Oh,
but-
crippling self-doubt.
Oh, I was not going to go that direction.
Oh, well, where were you going to go?
I was going to say gluten.
Oh, I wasn't sure where we were going.
I mean, true, same.
Yeah, no, okay. Well, gluten, yes, I would much rather talk about that. So my tummy doesn't like it. I do best when I avoid it. But sometimes, I don't know.
You just need it.
You gotta live.
Yeah.
You gotta live.
That was awesome. I mean, my weakness would also be the same for sure. Super insecure and constantly fighting that uphill battle.
Yeah.
I would say if there's like something that I'm like, if I'm gonna go in the direction like food wise, though, just like for fun. So specific. It's on my mind because it's hot outside today. Cold cut up fruit.
Oh, yes.
I can't say no to it. I could be completely like full, don't want anything else, done with sweets, everything.
If there's diced watermelon, I'm
gonna
after
have
it.
some. But I don't feel as bad about that because it's fruit. But
Yeah.
like it's, oh my gosh, it's on my mind all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Okay, so what is
We'll transition one more time.
so craziest haircut since we're talking about Samson.
Oh, I have plenty. I think I'm just gonna put up like one or two example pictures from my teenage years. I've gone through some phases for sure. I think you could probably tell that I've gone through hair phases just from the current look. I feel like aids to
Yeah.
she had to figure out some things in her teen years, and a lot of that was hair phases. So I think probably like the more recent super crazy one was I went with like undercuts for a while.
Okay.
So I shaved the sides of my head. I don't know if I have good pictures that show it, but I'll look. It was it wasn't crazy because it wasn't super noticeable when my hair was down. You could tell when it was up. But the thing that was crazy about the haircut was that I did it myself consistently.
Nice.
And I messed it up consistently.
There you go.
I would just continue to creep further and further up into my actual hair and not just rebuzzing the stuff that was already shaved.
Yes.
Because I would like miss it. And like I was just kind of haphazardly doing it in the mirror to myself without much accuracy. So by the time I like decided it's time to grow these out, it was like the full like side of my head. Like it just crept up on me.
No, you have to have a buddy. So
Yeah.
I did that. Okay. So let's see. 8th grade, 9th grade, would pull my hair up and then get like shaving cream and a razor and do
wow.
everything all the way around.
Wow.
But I would always have one of my sisters check it
yeah.
to make sure that I was not making that same mistake and going up higher than I should have. So I went through, in elementary school, I had a pretty wild collection of haircuts. The mullet in the back was a mainstay, but we would shave things into the sides of our head. I think I've put up somewhere on one of these a picture of me. I had like a checkerboard thing shaved into this side.
Very cool.
But when Batman, the 90s Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson came out, Batman logo right here on the side, that was awesome. Like absolutely awesome.
I bet everybody thought you were so cool.
Oh, they did.
Nice.
Like because I was the only one that had a mom that would do it. Like, 'cause she cut hair.
Were you a cool kid in middle school?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
Like, no.
You're setting it up
Yeah.
for me to think like, wait a second.
But I did do that. Like that
Nice.
was fun and that was cool. Like always been a little unique in that way.
I love that.
But that was an awesome haircut.
Nice. There is some big consequences that haircuts cause the guy that we're talking about today. So that's why it's involved in the story. But we've actually talked about him before.
Yes.
Do you want to?
So we've done a deep dive.
Yeah.
We did a deep dive on Samson. I think it was we was looking at different judges, I think.
Yeah.
And we did one specifically on him, and we'll link to that in the show notes so you can go back and check out that conversation if you want as a prequel to this one. But you won't be missing out. You won't be you won't be missing out a lot.
Yeah.
So we'll give some of the context of things. But if you want to learn more about Samson, that you can definitely go back and check out that other episode.
Yeah, and the clip that we're about to watch is also a message that's focused on the story of Samson. So you could also check out the full message that will be linked before. But should I send them to our clip?
Yep. Send them
All
to the
right.
clip.
So this is Brian Hughes.
No other Nazarite ever had strange level strength like Samson. Even though they also didn't cut their hair, they were normal. The secret to Samson's strength, the secret to his ability to break chains and defeat enemies and wrestle live animals, all of those special powers were really not the result of his hair. His power was always sourced in the presence of God. When God was with him, he was strong and victorious. But when he betrayed God, when he walked away from God, when God was no longer with him, he was no longer plugged into the real source of his strength, which was never his hair in the first place. It was always the presence of God in his life. Samson's story is tragic. He didn't honor God. He wouldn't keep his promises to God. He let his ego grow much stronger than his powerful arms. Samson had the power to break all the chains, everything his enemies put around him. But ironically, he refused to break the chains that ultimately led to his downfall.
That was a great clip from our senior pastor, Brian Hughes. And we just want to encourage one more time everybody to go check out that message. This is a really cool series that we're doing right now.
Yes.
That's it's exciting for us to get to follow these stories that don't often get much airtime on the platform here.
Yes.
So it's been really fun. But to continue the conversation, particularly about Samson, we kind of wanted to set the scene, talk more in detail about what it meant that he was a Nazirite, what that vow meant. So
Yes.
yeah.
And so you can read about what the Nazirite vow was. It was a special commitment. And you can check that out in Numbers 6, verses 1 through 21. It kind of unpacks what that is. But this is where a person voluntarily dedicated themselves to God it was usually for a specific period of time. And there were three main outward signs of this vow. One was no wine or anything from grapes, like the person abstained from all alcoholic beverages and grape products. Another one that would clearly designate somebody as underneath the Nazirite vow was no cutting of hair. The hair was to grow freely as a symbol of their dedication and their set apartness for work of the Lord. They would avoid contact with dead bodies, even close family members, to remain ritually clean. If you did come in contact, like you can read all about that in Leviticus. Like there was an entire production to get yourself ritualistically pure to do any work at the temple. And so to avoid having to do that, you were to remain in a state of ritual cleanliness. And so that was something that was a part of it. And it was usually for a temporary amount of time taken by either men or women. This wasn't something that was gender specific, just as a way to set themselves apart for work for the Lord, like I mentioned. Now, Samson's was different.
Yes.
His Nazirite vow was unique in a few key ways. And you can read all about this. This is Judges 13 through 16. So this was a lifelong vow.
Yeah.
This wasn't a temporary thing, and he didn't even choose the vow.
Nope, he did not.
He was birthed and said, "Here you go." Like
Yeah.
that's just kind of how it happened. His parents were commanded by angels to set him apart for that. That was in Judges 13:5. He was chosen by God. Like I mentioned, it wasn't a voluntary thing. He was appointed for this role before birth. And his strength, his heroic level of strength was tied to his hair.
Yeah.
It was so because he never had his hair cut, his physical abilities were a sign of his vow and calling to deliver Israel from the Philistines. And so that's just a little bit of the way of what the Nazirite vow was and how Samson's was different from your average run-of-the-mill vow.
I think it's interesting too, because it'd be easy to say, oh, his Nazirite vow was lifelong, so it was from birth, but his mom was instructed to follow the Nazirite vow while she was pregnant with him. So it was even like before birth that he was following this set of rules, which is really, I think that's just interesting to know more about him. I think it's really easy for us to focus on the superhuman superpowers, super strength, and get distracted by all of the other little details that kind of add into his story, which I think is interesting. And like we said, we already unpacked this in depth, so we're moving quick through it. But something that I wanted to mention that I think played into his downfall and his story of falling for his weaknesses was just the continual desensitization to sin that he experienced.
Yes.
So before we get into more specifics about that sin, I wanted to just bring up, I think it's really easy for us to think of the story of Samson as moving really quickly, because it's only, I know it's 13 through 16, so it's not that many chapters that tell his story in Judges. And I just think it's easy to zoom through it and forget like how long it
Yes.
was. And we can read at the end of his story that he had ruled over Israel for 20 years. So along that way from his young life, it doesn't really say when the 20 years like kicks in his story. Like obviously it wasn't from birth,
Yes.
but I don't know when it started, the 20-year countdown. I just know in my mind it's easy for me to think of Samson at the end of his story still the same man that was fighting, ripping open a lion, and like the young guy that he was, and just think it moved quickly. But there were years and years and years of him continually exposing himself to not the best choices, and it pulling him further and further and
No,
further off track.
whenever I look at stories like that, whenever you're looking at a large span of time, but it's condensed down into 3 short chapters, and each one is in itself has stories that are just sneak peeks into somebody's life along the way.
Yeah.
So I always try, whenever I go to read those passages, I try to think of it in that way. So okay, well, all right, well, we just saw that here. Let's check in with them again in another 3 years.
Yep.
From chapter to chapter.
Yeah, I think that's a good habit to have. I think it's really easy for us to just zip through and then think something that is like an obvious fault of whoever's story that we're reading. I think it's easy for us to put ourselves above it because it's like, oh, they fell so quickly.
No, it happened over a long time.
Yeah, exactly. We could just as easily be in the exact same situation that these people are finding themselves in. I think that it's that comfort of slowly getting used to things that are not good for you is something that you really need to pay attention to, because big bad decisions that you make for yourself usually don't happen overnight. They're usually choices that you slowly make and you slowly get more comfortable with because you're ignoring a deeper issue inside of yourself.
Yes. And so one of the things that we'll look at first is his ego and pride. So I have these listed in an order, but I'm going to go out of order a little bit.
Okay.
So, recklessness and overconfidence. He frequently ventured alone into enemy territory,
Mm-hmm.
not seeking any counsel, not trying to, hey guys, let's all check this out. Let's figure this out together. No, he saw himself as invincible.
Yep.
And so that the first one that I'm referencing there is like Judges 14, where he went in and fought everybody on his own, and he did that again in 16.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from, okay, well, there's something that might be a red flag, right? So then whenever you look into in Judges 15, after he killed or unalived 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone, which just
Insane.
imagine what that would look like for a second.
Crazy. I don't want to think about it.
I mean, that's just bananas. Like that's a level of endurance.
Yeah.
that
I don't
probably
know.
compares only to like soccer or football.
I don't know why we don't have like a legitimately like huge blockbuster like Hollywood movie about Samson's life. There's so many like huge moments where it's like I think we need it.
No.
Yeah, it's insane.
we'll look into that. So, but after he did the thing with the donkey bone, Judges 15:16, with a donkey's jawbone I have made donkeys of them, with a donkey's jawbone I have killed 1,000 men.
He loved to write poetry and little
I mean, he had a way with words.
Yep.
But no glory to the Lord. No.
He said, I did it.
I did it all on my own. That's a level of self-exaltation that it never bodes well for any biblical character.
Nope.
It just doesn't. So you take that in context with he's frequently going into enemy territory all by himself because he thinks he's awesome and it's him. It's never the Lord. And then even with there's 2 ways to look at the stuff with Delilah.
Yeah.
But in Judges 16, 6 through 14, that's kind of the Samson and Delilah story. He kind of mocks her a little bit after he constantly gives false information about his strength, and then he just goes to bed and takes a nap. And so I often wonder
doesn't
how
seem like a great boyfriend.
no, and he doesn't. He was he was married here, and so we'll look at some of that with the lust, because he sees something and he wants what he wants when he wants it, which is really just what makes him so human, I think. But the fact that he would like give her something kind of silly and then go to sleep, and then she would shout, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you," and then he would get up and do his thing. He just never felt like that nothing will ever go wrong, regardless of how sideways I've been living.
Yeah.
Because I'm Samson.
Yeah.
And it just reeks of pride.
Yeah, which I can imagine that'd be
be a hard thing to fight off.
It would be hard. I mean, if you think about your growing up and your parents tell you about, this angel that approached them and told them about your lifelong destiny and the special rules that you have to follow and the future that's waiting for you. It makes sense that would be something that he is naturally predisposed to struggling with. And I think that's the case for everybody. It's just about identifying what it is for you.
And whenever he wanted to marry the Philistine woman, they made that happen, even though that was one of God's big, fat, major no-nos.
Yep.
Before they even went into the promised land. But I imagine Samson. So I imagine Samson's childhood. He's sitting there. His mom's just brushing his long hair because it's never been cut and braiding it and just telling him what a wonderful boy he is.
Yeah.
And he can do no wrong and all of the things and never corrected because he's little Samson.
Yeah. He does give off the vibe of like a little bit of a mama's boy.
Yes. And we all see those children.
Yeah.
Go to any mall playground or any playground or any park or anything.
Yeah.
And you see the ones that are coddled and told that they're wonderful and special. And I mean, we're all uniquely made in God's image. And we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
We're talking about a kid that can do no wrong and is never corrected.
Yeah.
That's the vibes.
Yep.
That Samson, to me, those are the vibes that he gives off.
I would say so, yeah. To me too, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's that's the big glaring thing. And I think when you are somebody who struggles with pride and arrogance and the view of who you are, it can be really easy to shift that into a mindset of you should be allowed to get whatever you want, which we can see in other choices that he makes as well.
Yes. And so the other one that I wanted to look at was before you talk about how that all kind of desensitized him.
Yeah.
Was lust.
Mm.
And you see this where he basically commands his parents. Judges 14:2. I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife.
Nice.
Like, all right. And it was based purely on appearance.
Oh, yeah.
Like no other context for it at all. And like I just mentioned, that ignored one of God's great big fat no-nos of intermarrying with anybody outside of the faith. And so you also see that exact same mindset again. So one day, this is Judges 16:1. One day, Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute, and he went in to spend the night with her. Like, he knows he sees something, and he wants what he wants.
Immediate.
Yeah. I saw her, I want it. I saw her, I want it.
Yeah.
And then again with Delilah, you could think of it as I think of it as like a ego lust combo situation.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all of our weaknesses feed the other ones.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a great big mess. So even though she repeatedly sought to betray him, you would think this is the only part in the story where I'm like, dude is just an idiot.
Yeah.
How many times are you going to go to bed in one spot, get attacked, and not think that she's in on it
See,
somehow.
I don't know.
Especially whenever in all of those things, they go to do the thing that he just told her would take his power away.
Right. Which I don't know why. So to me, this is how I kind of read it. Like the different times that he like hints at this is what it is, but he's telling a lie. I read that as like arrogance,
Yes.
a version of himself that is like, I know that he can't be dumb. He was like, like he was an important guy who
Yeah.
like at this point had been ruling in Israel and helping as a judge for a while. I don't see it as him being dumb. I see it as him knowing that she's not 100% on his side, but he still thinks that he can get whatever he wants from her
Yes.
and still be better than her at the end of the day, because he's got a one up on her, that she's trying to trick him, but he's not falling for it, and she keeps looking dumb.
But the fact that he ends up telling her the real thing.
Which then I feel like that translates into him just getting sick of the dance that they're playing, and he's like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter anyways, and tells her. That's what I read it as, is that because he's allowing this person to be around him that is pulling him away from God and continually poking at his own weaknesses with lust and arrogance and trying to convince him to come over to her side, and he's not getting away from her.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's what results in him making the decision that cutting his hair in the first place is not that big of a deal.
Do you think at some point he had to have wondered throughout his whole entire life, what would happen if I actually did cut my hair? Would I really lose my strength?
Right, yeah, I would wonder too.
And there was a part of him that thought it really wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
That God was going to keep giving him his supernatural powers, whether he had it like they're not from God. At some point, it's just me. I'm just that.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like it shifted. His super strength shifted from something that was God given to something that it seems like through what we read that he thinks is just him being him and not being gifted with something that is like, I mean, superhuman. Like,
Yeah.
Dude ripped a lion in half. Like the average human, the above average human can't even do that. Like, that's insane. So like, I how could you not end up in a spot where you think it's because of me?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a lot, you know?
Yeah.
Anyways, it's crazy.
And so the I butchered that.
We both did.
Desensitization.
I should have picked an easier word.
to sin. You do kind of see him like a frog in a pot of water.
Yep.
Just a little bit more and a little bit more.
He's continually making it easier for himself to do whatever he thinks is what he wants to do. Like, there's not much in the story that reads as he consulted God or
Yes.
Consulted other people or made a decision that was not just him sort of like flippantly, not impulsively making a decision. A lot of what he does reads as very impulsive.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just kept sticking with it.
Yes. So I mean, it's easy to look at a biblical character or any character or any real person, that's just around you and pinpoint what all of their weaknesses are.
Oh, yeah.
But it's completely different to shine that same level of scrutiny at yourself. So
honestly, yeah.
I mixed up. I wasn't sure what the question, I wasn't sure whenever I answered earlier. And you said, what is your weakness? And I said, crippling self-doubt. I didn't know we were still in light and frothy mode when I answered that. So, I mean, that's one of my biggest ones.
Yeah, me too.
Is I constantly doubt myself, and I go into a lot of situations and areas with a great deal of anxiety. And so one of the things that I've done to overcome that is one of the things that I do to overcome that is to try to just stay tight with God.
Yeah.
Because and that one little breath prayer, I think I've mentioned on here before, God brought me here, he will see me through.
Yeah.
And just trust that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and representing whoever I'm supposed to be representing in any given space. And so for me, that helps give me confidence to go into places where I otherwise might not go.
Yeah.
That's like one of my big ones.
I've heard that you think of so easily ego and arrogance and pride being one of the biggest sin issues that somebody could be struggling with, biggest weakness for them. But the older I get, the more that I'm convinced of the fact that it is just as dangerous when you are struggling with a sense of like a false sense of humility. Like
Yes.
it's really just your insecurities, but because it doesn't look like being proud of yourself, it's easy to get away with calling it humility. But it's really not. It's insecurity.
Oh, big
I feel
time.
like insecurity is just as detrimental to our stories as ego and pride is if we're not self-aware of that and we don't keep it in front of us.
Both
It
of
just
them.
looks different. The messiness of it looks different.
Yeah.
It's just as bad.
And both of them are ultimately excuses for not doing or being who God has called you to be.
Yep.
If you run around saying, I'm just the worst, really? Like, of all of the people that have ever existed everywhere on the planet, you? That's just as twisted and
or even like, oh, if you're thinking of being in a room with other people, like, okay, you're the one that everybody is like annoyed is there and
yes,
doesn't think, has a right to interact, or like the extreme things that your mind can go to. It's like, are you kidding me? Like nobody's thinking about you as much as you're thinking of yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Like
it's arrogance or ego's twisted little cousin.
yes.
I mean, that's really what it is.
Yep.
And so, but before we go to there, what would one of yours be? Like,
very, very much.
and like, how do you handle it?
It'd be very much the same thing. The just my sense of self and self-doubt. And right now I handle it by just being very honest with other people about, where I'm at, what's wigging me out. If I am like slipping into like unhealthy thoughts about myself and what I'm capable of doing, I have people around me that will call me out. But it was a process to get there. Really just becoming self-aware of listening to other people, journaling, noticing patterns and stuff like that was the most important thing for me. And then I think like an adjacent like weakness that I really struggle with that is it plays into my sense of self, but the sort of like maybe the underlying root reason is that I have a really easy time talking myself out of what's actually true, about how other people treat me, about what they said and what it actually meant, like coming up with things
Yes.
for people, like filling in the lines of what I'm getting from other people with twisted negative self-talk. That's really the thing that then
I'm
plays
smiling
into
'cause
the
I got
crippling
you.
self-doubt. Like that's the like even growing up as a teenager when I struggled with so many like mental health issues and I struggled with self-harm, every time that I like really got out of either my mouth or on paper what was going on, it was always just that I was believing a lie about either myself or what somebody else thought about me.
Yes.
Or what or not believing the truth of what God says about me. So
And I mean, and that, depending upon individual circumstances, that can be a very difficult thing to do.
yeah.
Like, I mean, for me, it was. You read in Scripture the things that God says about each individual person, and like, you're uniquely made. Like, I have a purpose for you. I have a calling for you. I have plans for you to prosper in all of these things, and I invite you to come and cast your anxieties and worries and fears onto me because I love you and want what's best for you. Like, that's kind of baseline.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But that can be a very difficult thing to believe when the people that are supposed to be building you up here have never done anything for you like that, or you haven't experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's not something that can't be overcome.
Nope, just like arrogance,
Yeah.
really, yeah. Like,
Like you have to resolve yourself. And for me, I would have to, anytime I say daily affirmations, it reminds me of this SNL skit, like Daily Affirmations with Stuart Smalley. Are you familiar?
I'm not. But it
Okay.
sounds good. I love an SNL clip.
Like you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that guy.
Okay.
So I
yeah.
always imagine that whenever I say, but I had to do daily affirmations
Yep.
for years, and
Yeah.
sometimes I still need to do them.
Yeah.
Like you have to. It was in the Discovering Your Spiritual Identity book. Like one of the things,
Beloved Charter.
the Beloved Charter,
Yeah.
which was something that was extremely helpful for me in overcoming that big weakness of my own.
Yeah.
So we'll put a link to how to create one of those
Oh,
for
yeah.
those that need it.
It's a great experience to do.
So for Samson, because of his hair, Samson kept an outward sign of his vow, the hair. He pretty much ignored everything else
Yeah.
that the vow stood for. He looked like a man set apart
Yeah.
for God, but his actions often told a radically different story. He flirted with sin and outright sinned in other places.
Yeah.
He compromised his calling and what his specific task was, and got comfortable with a whole lot of spiritual shortcuts, and eventually lost both his strength and his way
Yeah.
entirely. And so that's we're going to look at a couple things that we can learn from
Yeah.
Samson, because his heart left the Lord long before
Yep.
anything else did. And it's easy for all of us to keep up the appearances of faith and church attendance and serving, if you even go to church, and still using Christian language and all of that, while ignoring what's really going on inside.
Yeah.
But like Jesus, now this is the Lord, and he hit the Pharisees with this. This is Matthew 23:25. You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence.
Ooh.
Ooh. And so is your private life aligned with the faith that you show in public?
And the crazy, like not crazy, but like the intense thing about that is that you're really the only one that can really give yourself the true gauge of that. Like,
Yes.
you can pray and ask God, reveal to me what I do not see about myself, but nobody else can give you the insight on what's actually going on in your heart other than God
Yeah.
and your awareness of where you're at.
And
like, it's your job to take care of this.
And the most harmful lies are the ones we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And so you I forgot who said that, but you have to practice brutal self-honesty. Like you can pray like you said, you can pray the prayer, God, seek me out and show me where you find fault and all of the things. But if you're actually not going to listen to it.
Yeah. And the more time that you spend choosing to not listen to what you notice, the easier that it gets to not listen. That's
Yes.
what when I grew up, my mom would always tell me about that, about the Holy Spirit speaking to me and guiding me, that the less that you pay attention to that voice inside of you, the quieter it gets, and the
Yes.
easier that it is to just continue to slip away. And we can see that pattern in his life. So being aware of what your weak spots are is really the important thing here, not ignoring that thing inside of you that's like, this is not who God wants me to be. This is not who God created me to be. There's something here that I need to surrender or give up. Not ignoring that is super, super, super important.
Yep.
And everybody has multiple weaknesses. I talked about a couple of mine, but there are more. there are many, many more.
We could sit here and just rattle off our own.
Oh yeah, I kind of suck. Like, I really do. God's moving in me, and I'm growing and changing and becoming more like the person that He has created me to be. But man, Is there a lot going on?
There's something to be said
Um,
for recognizing one's own wretchedness.
oh yeah.
To use
Yeah.
an older phrase.
So just a couple other examples from the ones that we listed of weaknesses that could possibly be something that you have going on in your life is maybe it's the need for approval from others. That's something that I have a significantly easier time not receiving. I think probably just because I have always been like a little bit of considered myself to be a little bit of more of like an outsider or like a um willingness to be maybe a little bit rebellious and stand on my own 2 feet to like handle this is who I am and you just have to take me, you know?
Oh, and see,
Take me for who I'm not begging for approval from other people. That one's a little easier for me.
no, and I mean I put those here because those are three of my other ones, and I just put, I put them there for examples. Like I've
Yeah.
struggled with approval for approval of others. Like that's something I've been a people pleaser in the past. I've gotten a lot better at that and not needing that as much.
Yeah.
I also like comfort, but I also like controlling things.
Yep. Me too.
I want to be in control of my own destiny, and so I mean those. But you can't do that and submit yourself to the Lord. I
Yep.
mean they're two contradictory things.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the only approval that does matter is God's. And so in various versions of my beloved charters, because I have like 4 of them that have played different roles in different times,
Yeah.
I've had to specifically address these things.
Yeah.
And then the other one is fear of being known.
That's a hard one.
That's one that we don't talk about it a lot, but like the enemy uses more than anything else. If people actually knew you, they would not like you.
Yeah.
And so the first time I went in and got really real with small group, like it allowed me to start working on that weakness. So there's all kinds of ways. There's
So
there's
interesting.
there's things that you can use. There's ways to overcome each of them, but at least naming them
Oh yeah. Yeah.
is huge.
It's interesting that you identify with that fear of being known because it's the complete opposite for me of there's a root fear in me that I am other people would consider me to not be worth getting to know or to not be worth the effort that it takes. So that makes me close up even more and keep it hit. So like the same result of not wanting to open yourself up to new people, but different motivations
Yes.
there. It's interesting that like really the only way to make any progress here is to actually truly know your core your core wounding of like what's going on inside of you. There's something broken in all of us because we're humans and we live in a broken world, and that brokenness inside of us just tailspins into even more
Yes.
junk. Yeah, it's crazy, but being able to name it is half the battle. It's super important, but we also don't have to. We might be the only ones that can truly name it with God. Like we're the only ones that have that full insight of ourselves, but we don't have to handle what's going on by ourselves. And we can read in James 5, verse 16, confess your sins to each other and
Yes.
pray for each other so that you may be healed. So actually taking the step to invite other people into this process about showing the true version of yourself and what's going on and what you know needs to be addressed, including other people in on that is the best option of how you could start to move forward.
Yeah, and it's something that, looking at it from a 30,000 foot view, that Samson never did. And then
You can like see he like didn't tell his parents. He didn't tell his parents. He went by himself. Like you can see the
Yeah.
pattern there.
no, he was an isolated person that nobody really
Yeah.
no, I mean, except for like his exploits, nobody really knew. And then the next one would be like, once you've named your things and you're working on your things, depending upon God's strength to help you deal with them,
Oh yeah.
and not just your own self-discipline. Now, I mean, once you recognize something, you go to the Lord, you confess it to Him, you talk to Him about it, you invite other people into it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put in place disciplines to not let yourself give into them.
Yeah.
But doing it on your own is not a recipe for success.
No.
And this, it sounds weird and it does to an outsider, like someone that's not in, that hasn't already have an established relationship with Jesus, but
Mhm.
walk by the Spirit and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh.
Mm.
I read that the first time and I was like, what does that even mean? Yeah. But and that's Galatians 5:16. But whenever you start walking by the Spirit and you
Yeah.
believe that and you recognize that God is with you, daily time with God and scripture reading and worship and prayers, they become more than just a habit.
Yeah.
They become very much a lifeline for not giving in to the weaknesses that we all have.
Oh yeah.
Because the way that you said it was really awesome. You know, we're all broken in some way, and it's just recognizing exactly where that brokenness is in you,
Mm.
where it comes from, and then recognizing the way that it manifests itself in different situations.
Mm-hmm.
You get a level of freedom because you're like, that's what it is, and that's why it's there. And
Yep.
through the Lord, I can deal with these things in a way that doesn't result in full-blown catastrophes.
Yeah.
Or at least mitigate them some
Yep.
while you are working on yourself in that way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too that you can see so much of the junk that we carry within ourselves of how we're just broken, how we're uniquely broken. It's generational junk. And like
Almost always.
so much of it is generational junk. And to be able to actually dig into it, it's really cool to see it being it improving the way that you function and feeling like you're more capable, less, what you're less held back by your junk, but then also knowing this is going to directly positively impact the future generation that is, coming up next behind me is like so it helps the responsibility settle a little bit differently in you of like,
Yes.
I can't I don't want to continue to pass this junk along in the same way. Like it's a
Give them a fresh new batch of brokenness to deal with.
exactly, yeah. But it's
I'm just
interesting.
joking.
It's interesting because you can see that in the beginning of his story in Judges 13, you can see the fact that it, at least I read it as his parents seem very unfamiliar with faith and what it means even
Yes.
like they seem they don't know who is appearing to them, they don't know why, they don't know the rules of what they're being told. They need the backup of the husband also hearing what's going on. Like there's some unfamiliarity there that seems like they really did give it their best shot to follow
Mhm.
what they were being told, but it feels like there was some parenting possibly lacking there that could have directly aided
Yes.
Samson's natural brokenness of being very full of himself and getting whatever he wanted. So, anyways, just that was a little bit of a tangent there.
No, but it's important.
Yeah.
Whenever I read Purpose Driven Life for the very first time, and I wrote down like the things that I believed my purpose in this world is.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was break the cycle, was the one that it was at the very top.
Yeah.
If you go back through my family systems stuff, it's riddled with craziness.
Yeah.
Like in all sorts of ways, various degrees and types of abuse and all the things. And it was the first time I heard one of my parents' favorite phrases come out of my mouth, and I was like, ooh.
Oh.
And I went to my room and cried because I said something that was just so uncool that I hated.
Oh.
Whenever I was a kid. And then eventually I found my way in church and all this other stuff. But that was one. That is a choice that everybody can make.
Mm-hmm.
Once you become aware of all of the things, you have a choice to either continue it and perpetuate it, or be the one to break it and be a transitionary figure or a
Yeah.
transformational figure in your family.
Which
So,
is interesting because that's really what a big portion of Samson's job was as a judge of Israel, is to not
deliver
just for
them.
him and his family, but for the entire nation.
Yes,
And the consequences of not following through when you are a leader, the
are
consequences
huge.
are even higher. Which we're not delving super deep into how his story ended, but go read it. Go
Yes.
go dig into it more. It's fascinating. But something that we can a final thing that we can learn from his story is the importance of being present and in the world, but staying away, being set apart, which is really how his story starts out. But it does not necessarily stay that way
He becomes right
at
much a
all.
part of it.
So for us, we often, at least in New Testament times, we would often refer to this like sentiment as being in the world but not of it. So we can see that Jesus, this was something that Jesus prayed for us to be able to experience. In John chapter 17, verses 16 and 18, they are not of the world, even as I am not of it. As you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. So we look to Jesus as the ultimate example, and
Yes.
we're supposed to be present, but we are not supposed to be of it. And there's also some importance there of part of being set apart is the awareness of the decisions that you make, but also who you surround yourself with.
Yes.
So the idea of being able to isolate ourselves is not really an option. And also looking like everybody else and how we live is not an option. So what are some points of how we can go about that? We can stay engaged with others, but keep ourselves rooted in Christ. And for me, that looks a lot like making an effort to be present with people who are not believers, but ultimately my inner circle is people who we don't agree on everything, but we agree on Jesus.
Yes.
and who Jesus was, and what Jesus did for us. That was also like the most important thing for me when I made the decision about of who I was going to marry, was that was not something that I was willing to compromise on at all. We can have, small disagreements in our theology, but ultimately, like, this is our life for both of us, is our faith and our calling and what we're dedicated to.
Yes.
And there's also the willingness to be someone who stands out around other people. Talk about being like set apart and making decisions for yourself that are different than other people would make. I bet Samson had some kind of awkward interaction as a teenager when somebody offered him a drink and he had to say no. Like, there's like
Yes.
being willing to look a little bit different and have the option of people not agreeing with that is something important for us.
Yes.
And then being willing to influence other people, but not allowing ourselves to become infected by what they believe. I think those are super important. But ultimately, when you think about what we're called to do as Christians, is really just to kind of consistently evaluate what's shaping me. Is it the world and sin and darkness and brokenness? Is that shaping me, or am I being shaped by the faith that I
Yes.
profess?
Because we're all being shaped and molded into something.
Oh yeah, are you choosing what's shaping
Yes.
you, or are you passively being shaped?
Yes. And that is definitely something that once I had like that recognition of that, it was a whoa.
Yeah.
I just allowed myself to be shaped and formed for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
And once I realized a bunch of it just wasn't true,
Yeah.
like what I believed about myself and everything else, that it requires such a level of digging in
Yeah.
and being willing to discard stuff that you previously believed was
Yep.
true. That's not a fun experience, but
Nope.
when you get out on the other end of it, you are so much more better off for it because you now have a better understanding of who God says that you are and of yourself.
Yeah.
And there is such a degree of freedom in that because you no longer feel controlled by people. You feel led by God.
Yeah.
And so that's something that is worth investing in
Yeah.
to make true for yourself.
Mm.
So, all right, we've looked at Samson. We pointed out a couple weaknesses. We could have added some more,
Yeah.
but because I think I've exposed 5 of mine in this episode. Like everybody
I could go on for a long
everybody has
time.
more than 2.
Yep.
But I think for me, as we wrap up this conversation, I think it's important to just remember that Samson didn't lose everything the moment that he broke his vow.
Yeah.
You can see where he struggled to keep it.
Yeah.
All along the way, and he didn't lose it. Like he didn't just gradually decrease. He lost it when his heart wandered. Like that is whenever he really started to miss out on what God was calling him to do, and it happened before he ever had his hair cut. His heart had wandered long before that, but even in his lowest moment, there, God still used him when he cried out to try to fulfill what his original calling was, which was to deliver Israel.
Yeah.
And God still used him then. And so you don't need to just settle for looking faithful.
Yeah.
Which is what he did. He settled for just, I look faithful by all outwardly appearances, but you can actually walk faithfully with God. And I think that's the big takeaway from his story for me.
Yeah, I think that I think mine is the noticing those patterns and the repetition of how things can pop up and it becomes easier and easier to ignore them, and being self-aware of what you're more susceptible to getting distracted by is the most critical thing in my opinion, and then the willingness to also put up overly cautious safeguards. Like it's not, it might not be a sin for you to post a picture of yourself on Facebook, but is the root motivation in posting a picture on Facebook to brag about something that you just bought?
Yes.
Then you might want to be overly cautious on how you're going to engage with social media if you have a pattern of feeling very egotistical about what you own. Like just being willing to say this might not be a sin, but it's risky and it brings me closer to sin. And
Yes.
I need to be overly cautious. And then I think it's just important, like you said, to remember that God can still use you despite your past mistakes, because you can read in Judges where it talks about Samson's story. The very first time that he gets distracted by lust and he notices this Philistine woman and wants to marry her, it says in the next verse that his parents didn't know that this was for. Let me actually just pull it up. I think it's important to get this right. It's chapter 14, verse 4. His parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at that time they were ruling over Israel. And now I think it'd be easy to get maybe a little bit stuck there and think like, oh, well, is God inconsistent because God doesn't want the Israelites to marry outside of their faith and their focus on, like, it's a consistent thing in that era that God did not want them to marry outside of the Israelite nation. That's like a command that they were given. So I kind of interpret and read that as God is moving and working good in the junk there.
Yes.
So I see it as that Samson's interest in the Philistine woman early in his career was what got him to kind of kickstart fighting the Philistines, which is what God called him to do in the first place. And so God is God, and he's going to move regardless of what we do. But wouldn't you rather choose to surrender to God's plan instead of being used in spite of your decisions by God?
No, that I read that as God very much redeeming his screw up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
'cause,
he
like,
will do.
Yeah.
If you submit yourself, which
And
is
he
what
ha-
happened
and
in his
he-
final act.
And he's done that for like God will, God will work good out of everybody who believes. Like every situation, God will work for good in our lives, and hard stuff and bad decisions that we make, he's still going to work it for good. But like, wouldn't you rather be intentional
Yes.
in how you're being shaped and formed, instead of just in spite of your decisions, God still moves? Like, that doesn't seem appealing to me.
No, I would rather walk faithfully and then watch in amazement at what God does around me.
Yes.
Instead of, whew, God really redeemed my
Yep.
my crazy jacked up last 10 years.
Yeah. Which, like, he's still
He's
good,
still the Lord.
and he will still do that. But wouldn't it be so much more fun to partner with him?
Yeah. What would it look like if Samson had been
Yeah.
obedient?
Honestly, yeah.
But that's what makes him human.
Very true.
So, so we hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and we want to invite you to please like, share, subscribe, because it really does help out little channels like this one.
Yeah.
If you leave us a review, we will send you an After Chat mug.
Yeah. Oh, and check out the description of this video for some information about the Beloved Charter. That's an action that you can
Yes.
do out of this episode to evaluate where you're at with God.
Yes. All right. See you back here next week for another episode of the After Chat.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for the After Chat. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To be the first to hear our next episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button and get notifications for new content. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram at PCC Wired and Facebook at Passion Community Church. For additional resources and links, check out the description. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The After Chat.